I really thought that we were gonna die.
Hope that's something nobody ever has to go through. Is that you spend the night in a church that people try and help, but you're out of your home. You can't control it.
Well, I guess we ought to be thankful we're alive.
He thought he was walking on the road and he slipped and fell in the ditch. Me and my husband and another guy tried to save him.
This is a nightmare.
All I saw was just a real tall column of fire shoot up, and then I said, look, and we heard the explosion, and then after that, it was just boom, boom, boom.
I said, I don't think we can take much more.
I kind of wonder if God got mad at us.
The third week of October 1994. It was a week of floods and fires in southeast Texas.
And those of us who lived through it will never forget the fire and the rain that destroyed so much so very quickly.
Floodwaters swept over a 35-county area around Houston, leaving 20 people dead and more than 11,000 homeless. Property losses are estimated at more than $700 million.
Incredibly, it all started with just a few thunder showers. We thought it was just another rainy day in southeast Texas.
Boy, if you missed the rain today, you weren't in town. Take a look at some of the showers. It was pretty widespread all across the Houston area, but the heaviest rain appeared to be on the southwest side, pretty much here in the vicinity of Channel 2. And some of our favorite old places, the rain was coming down, the water came up. Unofficially got a phone call from one of our viewers, 4 inches of rain in their rain gauge down by the Dome. And the flood warnings are up now for counties, again, up to the north and out to the north and west. We have to add to this list, the National Weather Service just announced that Montgomery County and Walker counties, too, are under flood warnings.
So if rainy days and Mondays get you down, this is the day for that. A tornado watch now is in effect for all of southeast Texas until 7 a.m. this morning.
2 people driving in high water north of Lake Conroe made a fatal mistake.
As they tried to cross Wyers Creek at Calvary Road, their car swept away. One body was found, the other is still missing. Dive teams continue their search.
The heavens opened up overnight, bringing inches and inches of rain to southeast Texas.
You won't be able to cross the creek here.
Since 1 this afternoon, Texas Department of Public Safety officers have been directing frustrated motorists away from the bridge. 10 miles east of Tomball, much of the same, rain-flooded roads and motorists with no place to go.
And I've tried every way to get home, but it doesn't look like I'm going to make it tonight.
Urge them to leave their homes and to seek other shelter.
So a very bad situation out here at rush hour, and it will only get worse.
Well, so far, problems inside the city limits are limited to street flooding, but city officials are expecting worse. Major bayous in the city are safely within banks for now, but the bayous are high and the ground is saturated. The city's Office of Emergency Management has watched the line of rain move south today over the city. If it sits there as forecast, as much as 10 inches of rain could fall in the city limits overnight.
2 full days of nearly continuous heavy rain have caused serious flooding in our part of the state. Good evening. We are bracing tonight for what could be the worst flooding in 20 years. 6 people reported dead as a result of the heavy rains and flooding in several counties.
Roads are closed, hundreds have been evacuated, and the forecast calls for more rain.
During the day, water raced down the Trinity River through Liberty County at a record 110,000 cubic feet per second. It's expected to go higher. Even more will be released upstream from Lake Livingston. People who work along the Trinity River at Liberty are scrambling to empty businesses.
I just hope we can get everything out before it costs too much money.
Every road and every bridge in Liberty County and our subdivisions of the Trinity River Basin is underwater.
This is where Highway 59 stops. Drivers turn back to Houston with a variety of regrets.
Well, trying to get to see my mother, and it don't look like I'm going to make it today.
We just picked up some friends of ours from Germany, and they come to stay a while.
They're staying a long while, huh?
Looks that way.
What's worse, there's no let-up. Driving rains drench back roads, too. Those who brave flooded pavement now know why they shouldn't. Even so, one woman talks her way through the roadblock, saying she has to go back home. You going in for the dogs?
Yep, sure am, baby. They're like my babies. That's all I got.
The house is flooded?
Yeah. I'm going in and get them.
I was at the end of a road. There's
no one that could hear us hollering or nothing. And we sat out there till after daylight, and I had to put the kids on top of the roof of the truck because the truck was going underneath water.
As the creek continued to rise, it became apparent all of the livestock would have to be evacuated. The Vickers needed help. Their story on the 6 o'clock news brought it.
Channel 2 made the announcement, and trailers started coming from everywhere. Most of them are horse owners and their neighbors, and most of the neighbors will make room for one more.
The babies were moved first. The little horses were skittish and had to be handled gently. Then the pregnant mares and breeding stock. Neighbors volunteered stall space, trailers, and helping hands.
By Tuesday morning, we knew we were in big trouble. Every part of the city was affected. 35 counties would soon be declared disaster areas. Even places that rarely flood were getting high water.
Evacuation shelters were springing up everywhere. They began taking people in at the Astro Hall. Cars were stranded on every street. Some people who went to work that day couldn't get home.
And the rain just kept coming.
Well, I really am looking for some good news, and unfortunately, I'm not finding very much at all. As a matter of fact, it seems that things are getting worse.
We're seeing the firemen going door to door and knocking on doors, making sure people are either out or have that opportunity to come out. We saw a wheelchair confined person loaded into this particular boat, as you see, and they're moving it up to the fire engine at this point.
You can't see them at the top. The fire truck's under the water.
Well, that's not a good situation, and unfortunately the rain has begun again, and the people behind me, they've been trying to just get any belongings they can and move them up to the second floor. It looks like the flooding situation is going to get worse because Sims Bayou, as they mentioned earlier, from the Harris County Flood Control District, is already getting to near record levels, and the Sims Bayou is only about 300 yards from where we are standing now, so easily that situation is going to get worse through the afternoon.
The city is virtually shut down. Schools, offices, and roads are shut down, and the water in many areas continues to rise.
Meanwhile, flood victims continue lining the street of South Acres. One by one, hand in hand they walk, wondering just where they'll go and when they can come home.
I'm Amy Huggins on the other side of the bayou, riding with firefighters Randy Hartman and Pat Sims. They've been working for 2 days straight without rest, their biggest challenge so far coming this morning as they navigate city streets watching for people in need, flagging them down for help.
The next street over here.
There are 3 command posts for this area of southeast Houston alone. Calls come in, this yellow tablet fills with names of flood victims, and the rescuers get busy.
It just rushed in, and it kept getting higher and higher, and it came up to the seat of my wheelchair. That's when my neighbor came over to help us out.
Splendora and Cleveland, all sorts of water there. Highway 59 is blocked there. This gentleman venturing the freeway, deciding to walk instead of bringing his car out. That's probably a pretty good idea.
They say that they may be shutting down the freeway at the San Jacinto River northbound as well because the river is really high.
Water's coming right up to the freeway.
Yeah, it's just right up to the bottom of the bridge right now.
The rainwaters were too much for swollen Brays Bayou to handle. Overnight, as much as a foot surged into homes in the Meyerland subdivision. County Commissioner Steve Raddick brought in an airboat to rescue stranded families. Linda Cantor and baby Brooke were soaked.
I did not expect this, not this bad, but it started coming in about 4 in the morning.
It's come down some, I would say in this area, probably about 50 houses. But you know, tonight is as saturated as everything is. Although Brays Bayou will drain rapidly, if this rain continues like this all day, and then we get some heavier rains tonight, then you can see 2 or 3 feet in these houses.
The problem here is that this subdivision sits right along Spring Creek, and Spring Creek right now, just a few hundred yards that way, is running higher than it has in the last 100 years. An awful lot of these houses now are underwater, about 500 houses. That's a conservative count.
It does not look good for us tonight. I do caution you, this is a very, very dangerous weather situation. Not only the flooding, but the severe thunderstorms and possible tornadoes later this afternoon. So everybody, keep an eye on the skies, stay home, and stay dry if you can.
Now, we know a lot of you have questions about not only the weather, but the flooding as it pertains to your particular neighborhood. We have created a group called Flood Force 2. Now, this is a phone bank of volunteers to personally take your calls and try to get you an answer as best as they possibly can.
On Tuesday, there were so many people in trouble, we preempted our regular programming throughout the day so we could bring you more flood coverage.
We set up a Flood Force helpline for you to call to get information about the road closures, evacuation centers, and flood conditions.
We got a lot of calls from people who wanted to help with donations of food, clothing, and money. So we teamed up with Randalls and high-low stores, setting up collection points all over the area.
All you have to do is go to any Randalls store and buy special cards in denominations of $1 or $5, and those cards, that money will be turned over to the Red Cross to assist flood victims.
The water has come up since last night, a good 4 feet since 7 o'clock last night.
When they put us on the evacuation truck, I cried because I didn't know what we were going to come back to.
Two-story house on the right side of the launch is busted half in two, and it's floated across the river.
Doug Hawkers?
Yeah.
We opened the door and the water really came in pretty good.
Time to go.
It was time to get out, you bet.
The current here is so strong, it's beginning to lift the buildings off their foundations.
This is a dangerous situation. Roland reported that snakes have been seen out here. We fly along and we see gas tanks that appear to be overflowing gas and oil into the water. Fire ants are another hazard.
It's probably neck deep in this immediate area.
One fireman told us this is the worst flooding on Spring Creek in 100 years, and there is still more water coming from upstream.
For those people just south of the Lake Houston Dam, you can't tell where the San Jacinto River begins or ends.
Anything could happen. Lake Houston Dam could break, and as much water's on the ground now, there ain't no telling what could happen.
We need a 12-hour window of no rain to kind of let this flood water, dissipate somewhat if we get more rain.
That would be nice to have that 12-hour period. Only nature knows for sure what nature is going to do. But the next best thing is Doug Johnson. Let's join him now. Doug?
I think any possibility of 12 hours with no rain for any time in the next 24 hours is asking for way too much.
The weather's starting to get a little bit worse down here. The fog is starting to set in, but it's starting to rain again.
The San Jacinto River is really on a roll right now.
I ain't never seen it this high.
This morning at 9 a.m. it was about chin high. So, it's probably roof high now.
Just about up to the second story.
Even veterans of Trinity River flooding say this will be the worst in decades.
Look at this, Houston, a ray of hope. The sun is actually shining out there in some parts. It's been days since we've seen this, and it's at least a small comfort to our neighbors who are trying to dry out.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah, I figured that I'll probably be cleaning up until New Year's Eve.
Banana Bend always floods, but never like this. Low power lines, high water, and a total washout. Everyone who has a home out here has lost everything that was on the first story. A lot of people moved things up. Some people telling us even that didn't do any good. Water gushing up into the second story of these homes. Some homes out here completely covered by water.
It's catastrophic. It's unbelievable. This 89 flood doesn't hold a candle to this flood.
It is nothing less than a tragedy. The Below-Wood subdivision, a more apt name now would be below water. At least 85 homes, nearly the entire neighborhood, swamped by the rising San Jacinto River. This house is built on stilts. It didn't help. People here have never seen it like this. For Al and Brenda Russum, a boat ride back to look at their home is devastating.
Look at our house over there.
This is our
there.
house. We have nothing left.
The river rose so fast, most folks here left behind everything they have. Cats cling to life to boards and chimneys. Rescue attempts are futile.
There's your cat, Frank. Oh, look at her.
We need to get somebody in a flat-bottom boat to come out here and get all these animals.
This boat made a run to rescue some dogs, and folks salvage what they can. But many will have nothing to go back to.
Those who boat out to their homes boat back with little hope. Just get back, ma'am?
Yes.
What'd you see?
Disaster. My whole place is floating. There's just not a whole heck of a lot left. There's nothing to salvage.
This is day 3 of U.S. Coast Guard search and rescue operations, and so far at least 435 people have been saved, 59 of them just today. Now this is one of those dramatic rescues. It happened in Channelview. An elderly couple spotted inside the cab of a semi-truck after the wife waved her husband's long underwear out the window. They'd been there all night after leaving their inundated home.
We traveled a long distance to the truck,
and it got scary there for a minute because the water was up to here, and I thought we were going to drown. And we're not exactly 21 years old. He hung on to me, I hung on to him, and we made it.
The fatal flood of '94 has now claimed more than a dozen lives, including that of a 2-month-old child.
Also tonight, 3 people are missing, swept off their boat in the San Jacinto River.
Authorities had been evacuating stranded residents when they came across 2 boats tangled in power lines. As they went to rescue one vessel, the other capsized.
We were screaming at them in a loud hailing device to put their life jackets on, and the last time that we looked, they were putting them on. And
then you turned around
and they were gone. They were gone.
There's good news about those 3 people who were swept off their boat on the San Jacinto River. They're alive. In fact, they saw the report on television and called the Coast Guard to say they'd made it to safety.
By Wednesday night, there was a lot of good news. Most of the rivers, lakes, and bayous had crested. Floodwaters were receding in many areas, and we thought the crisis was nearly over.
Most people woke up Thursday morning thinking the worst was behind us. Then, shortly after 10 o'clock, we were jolted into yet another crisis.
Somehow, some sort of leak has occurred here, which has set this river ablaze. And the fire is spreading now to the west from the river, from whatever petrol was in that river, and spreading back toward the refineries back here.
This explosion happened just minutes ago, and yet such a large amount of area seems to already be destroyed by fire.
It shook the ground and everything. I was standing there looking at it, and then the fire just spread all over everywhere. And then there were several more explosions, and that's all that I can tell you. Then everything was just burning and turning to black smoke.
The wind is blowing away from the refineries, so that's a good note. It'll blow the fire away from it, and the fire shouldn't work its way upwind, so consequently the wind will continue to blow it away from the refineries, and boy, that's good news, I'm sure, for those refineries.
We're also looking down on what looks like a slick. How wide of an area does it cover? Any idea of that?
Oh, I'd say probably 6 or 7 miles. I mean, it just instantaneously, as Ken said, it broke out. It was like a gush of oil slicked across the water here, and it covers several miles, and it's going to move on down the San Jacinto toward the ship channel.
There appears to be a lot more petroleum down there that could catch fire. So this is certainly a very dangerous situation. The fire sort of moves along this line of petrochemical material down there in the water and catches on to trees and buildings and structures that are down there in its path.
There are emergency responders on the scene right now. There's considerable smoke in the area. Residents have been asked to stay in their homes, shut off air intake, and most of all, remain out of the smoke at all costs.
There do appear to be a number of different structures that have already been inundated by the floodwaters that have now caught on fire. Many trees, and it's very difficult to make out from the air all of what we're seeing, but there do appear to be some structures down in there that have been burning.
The fire is moving toward the Banana Bend area and also toward the Rio Villa Park area, and all of the residents, or majority of the residents, have left these areas, and there's no way for firefighters to get into those areas if the fire in fact hits their homes. This is really a horrible situation. There's just nothing anybody can do except sit here and watch the fire.
No matter how terrible the crisis is, something good can still come out of it. Heroes emerge. People reach out to neighbors and strangers. They find strength in each other.
We'll never know how many times that happened during this latest catastrophe, but we do know about some of them. In Atascocita, a woman fell out of the rescue boat. She couldn't swim, but she was rescued a second time.
He jumped out of another boat and swam over to me and helped me.
Now you saw her floundering in the water and
I just dove in. Me and the fireman, we both dove in. That's all we could do. It was a split-second decision.
Now you two didn't really know each other.
We didn't know each other.
Did not know each other.
You recognized her this afternoon a few moments ago when you got here. You were standing here. You said, "Is that Linda?" And she said yes, and you hugged.
Right.
Well, I just made sure she was all right.
You don't have to jump out of a boat and save someone's life to be a hero. There are thousands of heroes all around us.
Everyone who donated food, clothing, and money to help the flood victims. And those of you who are helping with the cleanup at somebody else's home.
The service was brief, and instead of their Sunday best, the crowd had brought boots and Bibles. Those who came to help counted themselves the lucky ones.
It is a great privilege for us to do this.
The crowds broke up, and ready with shovels and sweat, they simply went door to door in Kingwood Riverview, offering to clean up.
I don't think I can lift it.
And the heroes are also the people who have been hit hard, but haven't lost their faith, their sense of humor, or their will to go on.
I thank God every time I just get a free moment. I thank God.
It only took material thing, and they can always be replaced. So we just take it little by little.
We have our health, we have our strength. We can go on from here.
When the river rises, over the plains, we watched as the rains came for another day. Over the banks, it broke through your door, and everything in its way. Can't recognize my little town. I want to run away, but I know that I've got to stay around. When the river rises, follow me to higher ground. When the river rises, find out what you lost, what you found. You can find courage. You will find the strength you didn't know. When your dreams are washed away, know in your heart new ones will grow. When the river rises, over the levees, into the cities, the water flows on and on. Over our heads, out of our minds, and what I had is all gone. Tears mixed with the rain that's falling down. I want to run away, but I know that I've got to stay around. When the river rises, follow me to higher ground. When the river rises, find out what you lost, what you found. You can find courage. You will find the strength you didn't know. When your dreams are washed away, know in your heart new ones will grow. When the river rises, mother, to us you're a flood. To others far away you're drowned. It's getting worse each year. The more we hurt you, the more it evens out.